Welcome to the Postgame, where I reflect on the critical long game plays revealed by our podcast guests.
People say don't take business personal, but it is personal.
Today, Cheryl McKissack Daniel, chair of the board of McKissack and McKissack, the oldest minority and woman-owned architecture and construction firm in America.
I understand that I received this inheritance at an unimaginable cost.
She is the fifth generation leader of this family business, nearly 200 years in the making.
So I knew my ancestors were resilient. I didn't know they were strategic.
Over her career, she has managed construction projects from universities, churches, and stadiums to transformative infrastructure projects like the new Terminal 1 at JFK and LaGuardia airports.
How did the McKissacks stay in business for 5 generations? Because it had to be a purpose bigger than ourselves.
Welcome to the Long Game Podcast. I'm Eric Becker. I'm an author, an entrepreneur, and I'm founder and chairman of Crescent, a family office that we built to serve founders, multi-gen business owners, and their families. For all of the entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs, for leaders and CEOs, the long game is for you. It's the practices, it's the leadership skills, it's the culture that can stand the test of time. I'm Eric Becker, and this is The Long Game. So just reflecting on the interview with Cheryl McKissack Daniel, I was thinking about the incredible resilience of her family, but also how Cheryl mentioned both at the beginning of the interview and at the end of the interview, it isn't just the persistence of her family that she's proud of through the generations, but the fact that her family has been strategic in the way that they make decisions and the way that they think. And so that idea of adding strategic to agility and persistence, I thought was special and different. I also really admired Cheryl's positivity. When we went through these moments of truth, which we've seen in long game companies over 100 years, because she's the fifth generation, they've had more moments of truth than many, many other businesses and families.
It's all about being excellent. I understand that I received this inheritance at an unimaginable cost. Unimaginable cost. So what I do with it really matters. And so I can't cut corners. I have to put my best foot forward. I have to know my numbers. I have to know, my construction sequencing. I have to know, my contracts. And I have to be prepared every time I showed up.
One thing that stands out to me is this idea of owning the problems that you need to solve, and that no problem, no matter what its origin, no matter how difficult it may seem, that you need to own it. And I thought that Cheryl really embodied this idea of owning everything in your world and engaging and tackling that problem until you solve it.
I I have faced negative retained earnings. I have faced cash flow issues. I have faced, exodus of important people. I have faced all these things. But, what I have learned over the years is there is not one problem that I did not create myself.
Okay. You own it. You own it.
Own it.
Mhm.
So if I created it, I can get myself out of it.
It was incredible that when Cheryl talked about family, that as she grew up, she was really being trained in all the experiences that she was having from where they lived and where she went to school to even the presents that she received for Christmas.
We didn't get dolls for
Uh-huh.
Christmas. We got Leroy lettering sets. We got drafting tables, T-squares, things like that. We
Wow.
would go to our father's office on Saturdays and trace documents. By the time, I was 12, I could trace, full documents of residential buildings.
And probably didn't realize it at the time, but how these experiences were so part of who she was becoming and how she was being prepared by her family for future leadership. There's a story that Cheryl told of working at Turner really one of the nation's leading engineering and construction firms, gaining experience that inevitably was going to be part of her journey back into the leadership of McKissack and McKissack. But that when her mom determined it was time, her mom called her boss.
Well, yes, my mother called up my boss and told my boss I was quitting. I
Now that's a moment of truth. We have these moments
Yeah,
of truth in life, and having your mom call and to tell your boss you're quitting is pretty amazing. So that was your call to come home to the company.
yes, oh, yeah, then she called me and told me I quit that day.
And did you? I mean, I imagine then you
Yes,
did. Yeah,
yes, I
incredible.
did. Yeah, that was foresight on my mother's part,
Mhm.
and her timing couldn't have been better. It was perfect.
I think of a parent doing that, and that is a risk. But her mom was probably thinking that if she called Cheryl first, if Cheryl wasn't ready or didn't think she was ready, she might have tried to talk her mom out of it. So by telling the boss, perhaps her mom thought that she was drawing a line in the sand, that it was going to happen now. But that is the most unique story. I've heard many stories of people that have had the call to come home to a family business, and that is the most unique one that I've heard. I do think that in family businesses and in multi generational families, and especially when you've been receiving the kind of training and care that her parents had mapped out for Cheryl, there is a burden of responsibility, a heavy weight on you. But I thought that Cheryl's advice to young people who might be confronting that, she really turned that into a sense of pride, a sense of stewardship and responsibility. So that burden actually becomes a sense of responsibility, a sense of mission, and part of the energy that drove her forward, where she really was taking the energy of her ancestors and of her family and using that to power what it took, because it's not like it was easy and that she was handed a business that was perfect and that she could just coast. She had to turn on and drive it forward into larger and larger projects, more on a national scale.
And so, I would say, um, that the generational companies, that the weight that's on us might be a little bit more, and that's and that is why we are, scratching, crawling, whatever we can do to make sure we keep this business going
Yes.
and make sure that we pass it on to the next generation.
So one of the things that is super interesting about the long game and the Centurion companies that we studied is that many people think that an older company, one that has survived generations, that actually they're bureaucratic, they're old, and they're slow moving. But it's completely the opposite. These businesses have agility and survivability in their DNA, and they've proven it over and over and over again. So they're the first ones to confront reality and to take action. And they have found that by recognizing these moments of truth and taking action, that has taken these businesses and allowed them to survive over time, generations, which is really incredible. So when we talked about that with Cheryl, she, I think, embodied this idea of, even in the fifth generation, she was an incredible risk taker. And when she talked about even her quote around like nothing's middle of the road, we are on the precipice of a cliff and we're either going to soar or we're going to crash. I mean, that is, you hear that kind of risk taking from startup founders. And here we are with the fifth generation still having as one of the principles, deeply embedded spirit of being a risk taker.
Agility is very important. I think when you're carrying the weight of a generational business, you have a desire to make sure you get that baton to the next person
Right.
and that you've made the business better.
Better.
And you can't do that without being agile,
Mhm.
without making sure you know the latest technology that could help make your business more efficient or create higher revenues and profits. You can't help but think outside of the box on what you can do differently.
Being a risk taker is part of being a centurion, and the reinvention that businesses need when the world is changing and expecting that the business is going to need to adapt to a changing world. I think that being a super steward is when you have this incredible legacy and history that McKissack and McKissack has. There is this responsibility that Cheryl articulated beautifully of passing it forward and making sure that you leave it better than you found it. And I think that is just a beautiful way to think about not just business, but frankly, life and family as well. A lot of times in business, people will say, when they make a decision, they'll say, oh, it's not personal, it's just business. But Cheryl really looks at it the opposite. Business is personal, especially in a family business. And that means everything from owning every aspect of the business, all the problems, the good things, the opportunities, the challenges, but really realizing that your decisions do impact people personally, and that being all in element of what it takes to be successful, particularly generationally over these different generations. I think that Cheryl said it beautifully, and that is that it is personal and we own it. We have to own every aspect of it, and we need to know our details and our numbers and confront our reality every day.
So, how did the McKissacks stay in business for 5 generations? And
Mhm.
so we looked at what were some of the qualities, and that's how we came up with the 5 Ps, um, persistence, preparedness, perseverance, and then productivity. And then,
Mhm.
of course, I added the other, which is prayer, because
Yes.
it had to be a purpose bigger than ourselves.
I want to leave you with something Cheryl wrote in her book, The Black Family Who Built America. It's a line that captures her leadership philosophy and the McKissack spirit across every generation. On each big project, we reach a new level. We're standing at the edge of a cliff. Either we're going to make it or we're going to plunge to the ground below in a spectacular crash. It's never going to be middle of the road, inconspicuous, or ordinary. Nearly 200 years, 5 generations, from an enslaved man laying bricks in North Carolina to a woman managing over $50 billion in construction projects across America. Not middle of the road, not inconspicuous, anything but ordinary. Before I let you go, if this episode resonated with you, please share it generously and please click the subscribe button below. Send this to someone in your world who's navigating a pivotal moment right now, someone who's staring down a decision and might need the reminder that recognizing the moment is half the battle. See you next time on The Long Game.
The Long Game, a Crescent podcast, is intended for information only and is not investment advice. Any company discussed is not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any security. Investing involves risk, including loss of principal. Please consult your advisors before making investment decisions.